Hello, hopefully I've gone live on here. I hope you can all see me. I don't know if I've got anything enabled at the bottom. Could somebody comment to let me know if they're there and they can see me? We've been having some technical issues, so theoretically we should be broadcasting out. Yeah, I can see that 2 people are watching, so that's a start. 5 people are watching. Many apologies for the late start, people. We had a couple of issues technically. It's going to get quite awkward in a minute actually drawing, because we had all this set up with tripods and all sorts of exciting things, and then when we went to go live it told me the camera wasn't supported on my system, so I've been running around trying to find lots of other things to broadcast with. And eventually I've had to go through my iPad, which I haven't got at the correct angle to sort of do some of the things I wanted to do. So there might be some jiggling in a bit when we get to the drawing side of things. However, the first part of the session, we decided... Hello everybody, by the way. Thank you so much for tuning in. After a slightly chaotic start. We are going to, later on I'm going to be doing some live drawing with you, but we thought we'd start off with me giving you a little guided tour of some of my sketchbooks and stuff, and talking about the pens and pencils and stuff that I use and why I use what I do, and just to give you a little flavour of the sort of stuff that I do. And then in the second half of the session, the plan is to do some drawing of our Green Man, that we created for this year's theme, using different mediums. So apologies, as I say once again, for the late start. I'm now sweating and slightly panicky because everything that was all set up this afternoon to go perfectly didn't. However, all right. So sketchbooks. Well, I use a variety of sketchbooks for different things, really, and I've got a couple of nice leathery ones there, which we'll look at in a minute as well. So I've marked up a few pages and stuff. This one goes back a few years. This one's actually from 2015, and quite a few of you, I don't know if some of you know my Hot Santa character. He's the sort of genesis of our Green Man, actually. Well, back in 2015 in December, I decided to do a Santa a day, and this was one of our Santas from that. That was the first drawing in this book, and I drew this guy. And we decided, every day I drew a different Santa, and there are all these sort of different strange versions of Santa that I drew. And then on one of the days I drew that guy, who was the first ever Hot Santa. I drew him just as a one-off, and he got quite a reaction from people. So anyway, that's him. So we'll come back to him later. So this sketchbook is one that I just used to keep beside me when I was watching TV or anything like that, and if anything cropped up that just brought an image into my head, I would sketch it down, like I was watching a thing about the 1920s, the bright young things of the 1920s, and I would do a face like this, and then I would say I'd be watching my children. That was my son at his Christmas Carol concert, and my daughter at gymnastics. Her being the very tall one in the middle, always looking much taller than the others. So these were little live sketches I would do of stuff that I was seeing in front of me. And then I saw Lily about to go outside in the snow, and it would be warm enough. So this was that sort of a sketchbook. You'd never know what I was going to draw next. I just sort of, this guy came into my head, so I just drew him. And then one day I'd be trying to do a drawing, and the cat would sit on me, so I would do a drawing of me trying to do a drawing with the cat sitting on me. And this is also the genesis of the Doodleaday that I do as well, where little comments on my life. Other little things like popping to Benjamin Disraeli's house and just sort of seeing. So there were little autobiographical doodles and things like that. And then 2 pages next to each other. One, I just sort of thought of some guy in a costume and just drew that, and then I'd be at a rehearsal for a play and see some people sitting around and quickly grab a pencil and just draw them, because I liked all the shapes of their body. So I often find that to get a really quick one down, you're going to use a pencil. We'll come to that in a minute when we start talking about mediums and stuff. Watching my kids on a day out at the at some lovely gardens and things like that. So I'm just squizzing through this one, and then this next one is very much like the sort of Doodleaday type pictures. We were on holiday in Spain at the Alhambra. I'm hoping that these are going the right way round. They may be back to front because I'm having to use the iPad, so these might be reversed. I'm not sure. If someone can tell me actually if the writing is the right way around or if they're reversed, I don't know. It'd be nice to know. But this was the style that I started to use eventually on Doodleaday. And it was one of the early ones I did in that style. And then sometimes I like to use a brush pen. So there's this brush pen there. Lovely work. Sorry, I don't know who you are. Excellent. Thank you, Claudia. It's reversed. Okay, so there's not much point in looking at the writing. Okay, this was a sketch I was doing at a rehearsal, outdoor rehearsal for a Shakespeare play, and again, just grabbing the pencil and quickly sketching down stuff that I think. Thank you. Reversed. Okay, so that's, yes, I will. Stuff that's written is not terribly relevant, but it's good to know it's reversed. Okay. Then, so that's the sort of sketchbook I would carry with me every day, and I have this nice little leather one that I carried around with me for a while, and this one I decided to basically fill with faces, and I just sort of started sketching in Biro. I'm just going to randomly flick through the odd face here, even a dinosaur face, or so they're just, I would literally just be sitting there and think, I need to do some faces. I just want to sort of push around features to sort of play with them a bit. So some are more pushed around than others, you know. See if I can find a few more extreme examples. And he's quite a nice one. There's sort of a Falstaff type character. Yeah, I'm Gary Scribbler. Someone says I don't know your name. That's all right. Doesn't matter. I'm not a famous person. I'm Gary Scribbler on Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that. I do a Doodleaday diary. My wife died about 2.5 years ago, and I use my doodles as a form of sort of self-therapy and working way through my grief and stuff like that. And I'm an illustrator anyway as well. And they sort of got picked up and unfollowed for that, really. So you could look up Gary Scribbler afterwards and you'll find me that way. That I drew when Christopher Lee died. Again, just... So this is just a little book of faces, really. So it's a face book. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. So you see what I mean? This is one I just wanted to push faces around. Caesar and Cleopatra. Just pushing proportions. It's always nice to sort of play around, really. So this was just a whole book of little faces, which I would just keep in my pocket. Yeah, and I started getting into pirates in this one. Anyway, enough of that. That's that. And then I got involved with the Big Draw, which was fantastic. They asked me to sort of come and join them as an ambassador, and I started using these lovely Pink Pig sketchbooks that came through, and at the moment, I'm doing a series of Curious Creatures in the mornings. It's the second load I've done. I did a load of them a while back. I don't know if I've got a date on here. No. So these were done in one of these sketchbooks. The writing's all backwards, of course. But I asked people for weird words, and I would just do all these funny little creatures based on the weird words that people said. And these are all drawn with brush pen and coloured pen and just simple coloured pencils. So this is just, again, they would take about 10 minutes each or something like that. And this was the original batch of those that I was doing. So there's a whole book full of them here, sort of some strange things like this. So they were just good fun to do. And then there's another one here. I do love working on brown paper. It gives me a mid-tone to work with. And one of the things I did a series of drawings on there, just little things that were simple pleasures, like giving back tickles, or discovering unexpected chocolate in the back of the cupboard. Beams of sunlight through the woodlands. Looking for faces in trees. Starting a new sketchbook. That's always a good one. I do enjoy that. Browsing art supplies. So on. So I did a whole book of those, which was cool. And that was using the brown paper. And then just recently, I did a series of trees in the mornings. I would do trees that would have little faces in them. So there's a crab apple there, and aspen. There's a little face. Look there. And again, these ones, I just went through a book of trees, book of British trees, found the names of the trees. I would start drawing, and then the characters would suggest themselves to me. Wild cherry. Here we go. And these were great fun to draw. I really enjoyed drawing the trees. Hornbeam, like him. So that was oh, and of course oak. You've got to have oak. And that was a lovely series to do, and I followed that on with a series of flowers that had little faces. And as I say, at the moment, I'm drawing the curious creatures. So, and this is a sketchbook I've just finished, really. And again, it's another one that I would just keep in my bag and carry around with me. And it's very much a practical sketchbook. By that, I mean you never know what the next page is going to chuck up next. So this is the sketchbook in which I did the Hot Santa series that I did a Christmas back or whatever. So they would just sort of get through here, the Hot Santas. And I did one of those every day. And this was the book that they were done in. There he is there. Again, untangling his Christmas lights and so on. But also, you know, I use a sketchbook in very practical ways. When I did some little books recently of modern day fairies, and I would plan the double page spreads. Very simple thumbnail drawings of what the double page spread of the books is going to look like, so that when it came to drawing it, I knew what my layout was going to be. So you'd find a page like that, or then you would find I had to design some posters for a theatre company recently, so that was working out the Romeo and Juliet image and the Midsummer Night's Dream image that I was going to have to do for that were going to be taken as photographs of performers, but just using the sketchbook to come up with the ideas. And or a set design for a play, which is just sort of thrown together in sort of, you know, pencil very quickly, just to give me an idea. So each page that you come to in here, there could be a different medium or a different reason for doing the drawing. I went to visit the park where we have a tree in my wife's memory, and it was a beautiful day, and I just decided I'm going to draw the tree today. So that was her tree on a lovely summer's afternoon. I just sat and drew her tree, which was a very peaceful thing to do. I was working on a animation project and needed to design a sort of strange house, so grab a pencil and push the architect around. So every page that you come to, there's a different feel to what's gonna happen next. And it's in the back of this book that our new Green Man character suddenly appeared, because we started talking about the fact it would be nice to have a mascot, and so I started coming up with some ideas. So that was the first one, which is he was a little bit forbidding. It was a nice idea, but he was a little bit forbidding. Inspiration, yeah, Claudia, yes, inspiration from everywhere. That's right, it is everywhere and anywhere. So that was the next version of him. He started to look a bit friendlier, but it wasn't gelling with me at that point. I tried another one. That one felt a little bit like the Kurt Russell character in that Christmas film that was on recently, which was sort of loosely based on when I was drawing it. And again, he was starting to feel a bit more like the character we wanted. And then I drew this page, which I was thinking about leaf beards, and that wasn't working. Then I started thinking about this kind of a style or hood. And then I sketched this guy, who I was thinking very much of the Santa character that I've done. I thought, what would a cousin of his look like? And I started to draw that one. And I thought, that's it. That's the genesis of him. We've got him now. So, from there, I then moved on to the computer, and actually the drawings of him are done in the computer these days. But we move on now to the main part of the evening, I guess, which is looking at different mediums and drawing styles and stuff. Now, there's going to be a bit of jiggling about while I try and put the unexpected iPad onto a tripod of some sort to see if we can actually see what I'm doing. So bear with me, and if I drop the iPad, this could all go horribly wrong. So we hope I don't do that, because that could be a very expensive live stream otherwise. Oh dear, now my photocopy has gone all noisy, so I'm going to switch that off. Right, that's better. Oh, inspired to start a sketchbook. That's nice, thank you very much. That's a nice thing to say. Okay, let's see if I can lean this thing forwards and we can see the desk. Oh God. Right, it's not going to be the most successful. I had a beautiful camera all lined up to look at this, and then Facebook decided it wouldn't work with my camera. So I'm going to have to hold this up and draw up here, aren't I? Oh gosh, that's going to be awkward. Or I'm going to have to hold the iPad in one hand and draw with the other. There we go. Let's see if that will work. This could get messy. Excuse my ignorance, I don't know who this is. Well, that's fine, Chris, don't worry about it. I'm nobody very exciting. I'm one of the ambassadors for the big draw. I'm not famous, but if you look up Gary Scribbler online, you'll find out who I am. But I'm not at all offended that you don't know who I am. It doesn't matter. Right, this is going to be tricky, because I do need to somehow support the iPad, and I don't quite know how it's going to work. So this was the idea, is that we, I'll tell you what, I'm going to try reversing the camera. Okay. This is a nightmare, bear with me, we're getting there, we're getting there. There we go. This is going to be so awkward. Hello! I'm back. Okay. After some frantic running around, I am back. Again, let's have I'll wait for a couple of names to pop up just so that I know people are watching again. I hope we didn't lose too many, but we probably did. I am very apologetic for that. But what can you do? Oh, I've got a couple popping up again. Oh, good. We're back. We're back in the room, people. Welcome back. Thank you so much. Okay, that was a little bit of a disaster, and I do apologise. As I say, all the best laid plans, it all went completely wrong. But so I've changed rooms. I've changed rooms, and I've also had to plug the power into the iPad because that was about to die as well. I've got it on different tripods. I found a new sketch pad which is bigger, so you can see what I'm doing better, and we can carry on. Oh my goodness, that was so silly. But all right, so apologies, as I said before, but that was well, I hope you enjoyed the comedy value, if nothing else. Right, so yeah, I was going to talk about the different mediums that I use when I'm sketching, and why I would choose different things to draw with at different times or whatever. So obviously, you know, I go with a pencil quite often. I quite like, back to our scheduled programming. Thank you very much, Claudia. Yes, I like a soft pencil, like a 2B. And I find that the pencil is really good when you're grabbing something that you're actually seeing live, like a quick pose, because you can work very fast with a pencil. And I like the kind of loose quality you can get. And I've always said to people, I like the drawing underneath. That I don't like a drawing to necessarily be too clean. So so we're going to be drawing our green man lots of times here. So I would very loosely knock in the shapes first of all, just so that I know that he's going to fit on the page where I want him to fit. Sometimes I would even use, you know, the edge of the pencil if you want to go for a slightly broader feel to the underdrawing, as it were. And then the nice thing about pencils is you can just slowly work it up. You can either just go in really fast and just get a really nice loose drawing, just grabbing the essence of a shape. So tattoos on his arm and his, you know. So if I was looking at somebody live in front of me, I would quite happily just sketch as loosely as that of you know, watching somebody. See if I can come a little bit closer. There we go. But then also the nice thing about pencil is, you know, if you want to work into a little bit more detail, you can just by using the different pressures on the pencil. And I do find that something like a 2B is nice for that. That you can. So a nice loose bit of drawing underneath the face from there, and then just putting the pressure into the shading places a little bit more here and there. So it's very fast. Yeah, I am right-handed. Sorry, yeah, this is because I'm having to use the screen backwards. It looks like I'm left-handed, but I am actually right-handed. So you're seeing this back to front. And the nice thing about pencil is you can very quickly just tick in little bits of shadow if you want to as well, like that, just to sort of. There he is. Yeah, so I would tend to use a pencil if I was going to be working fast. Then, when I'm doing things like the Doodleaday, the sort of observational things about my life, I like to use one of these, just a simple uniball style, almost mechanical pen, a bit like a gel biro. And the thing that's nice about this is I always use these without any underdrawing. So I'll go straight in with these. Now they're very interesting to draw with because of course there's no light and shade. The pressure that you use the pen for doesn't really affect the line very much. So it's all about making lots of little marks. Again, I'm drawing slightly sideways, so it's all going to feel a little bit weird as well for me, this sort of thing. But so it's a slower drawing style because you're having to consider where each mark is going to go. You're not pushing it around like you would with a pencil, when you can sort of experiment with the line a bit, and you know, by pressing light and then building up the pressure. So you have to make a decision and go with it when you're working with a pen like this. But I find that really nice when I'm doing my diary style drawings, because you're being a little bit more considered. It's stopping you, making you think a bit, which is kind of part of the reason for doing the diary style drawings in the first place. And there's a, I don't know, there's a sort of charm to this kind of drawing that I quite like, and you're using little bits of cross hatching and little bits of scribble like that. This guy has these cool dreadlocks, so quite often to get a bit of depth in there, you know, you do some uneven shading like that to sort of get into it. There he is. You see, so just going to bring the front down a little bit. There we go. Again, I'm not going to spend ages on each drawing, because we're going to be talking about, you know, different mediums. But you get the idea. It's a nice immediate style to use, and it makes you really consider the marks you're making. Now, one of the other pens I use, and this is kind of closer to what I actually do the finished ones with on the computer, because I draw on a graphics tablet. There is a screen that you draw on. It's called a Cintiq, and you draw with a digital. It's like digital paper. But I love to work with a brush pen. Now this is the brush pen that I'm using, which is a very nice sort of cartridge-based brush pen. With that, I would underdraw first, and I tend to use a very pale light blue underneath, just to get my shapes that I want to sort of tick in first. So let me just tick in the shapes in the light blue. You probably won't see very much at the moment, but that's okay. It's like a magical mystery. It'll all come clear. And there he is, and then let's put his neck. And he's got his dreads out the back there. Okay, so I've got my shapes underneath that I need, so now I can go in with the brush pen. And again, what make is the brush pen? That's a very, very good question. The brush pen is I will have to put that in the notes afterwards because I don't know. It's but it's very nice. I will put what makes me choose light blue. It doesn't. It's a lovely colour to work with because you can see it, but it doesn't really interfere with the main picture, and you can leave the lines in place after you've worked in with the black, and it just, I don't know, it's like a ghosting of an image. Plus, it's traditionally what we use in animation when you're first sketching out before you go in with the sort of harder pencil. We tend to use the blue first. Now, once you've got the underdrawing in, which you can be quite loose with, then with the brush pen itself, you know where the marks are going to go, so you can be a little bit more fluid and flamboyant with the mark making. And I love a brush pen because you get that lovely thick and thin whipping the pen. And the other thing about a brush pen is you can do very thin lines and very thick lines as well, which is quite nice. So it's probably going to be a bit wonky because I'm drawing around a corner, but that's fine, isn't it? It doesn't matter. Nice thing about working with a brush pen as well is I tend not to try and overdraw with a brush pen. You kind of want to do less lines, really. You almost don't feel like you want to. It doesn't lend itself to scribbling. But as I say, you can get these lovely dark moments to create the little shadows in there underneath things like that. I've got to go a little bit quiet while I draw occasionally, rather than talking all the time. Just while I vaguely concentrate occasionally. So, here we go. And again, I shall rush slightly on some of these bits here. I would take a little bit more time and care usually in this sort of thing, but you'll get the idea, and that's really what this is about, is just talking about techniques and ideas and giving you a flavour of some of the stuff that the choices that I make, really. So that's using the brush pen, and then when I'm doing the finished ones for Big Draw, I use a grey like brush ink area for some shadows and stuff. So if you're doing it on paper like this, I guess you could just go in with the side of a pencil and just give it a little bit of shading in those creases and stuff, just to give it a little bit more three-dimension. There we go. So, are brush pens easy to use if you're inexperienced? They're actually quite tricky. You can get some nice sort of felt tip style brush pens, and they're good ones to start practicing with because, you know, the nib is less sensitive and it will take a little bit more of a bashing. They are really nice to draw with when you get your head around them, but they do take a bit of getting used to. But I would hardly recommend having a go at it. Have a look around at some of the art shops. Some of the sort of felt tip style brush pens are a really good way to get in. Now, so, oops, my absolute, oh there, let's get a closer look at that. There we go. There he is. So that was the brush pen version. So My favourite thing to sketch and draw with, to be honest, is a Biro. I like to use a Biro. Why does it say low battery when I've actually plugged into the mains? Oh God. Hold on, hold on. No, that's all plugged in for some reason. All right. I may disappear in a minute. I've only got 10% left apparently, and I don't know why it's saying that when I'm actually plugged in. But there we go. One of those days today. My favourite thing to use is a Biro. And this is a nice wooden one that I found at a arts fair. So the nice thing about a Biro, that I think, is you can still do that thing that I said before about pushing around like you do with a pencil, first of all, and make light marks, and then you can work into it a little bit more to create more depth and stuff like that. And I think there's just a freedom about a Biro. So you can see I've got the underdrawing just done like that. So if I disappear suddenly in a minute, it's because my battery's gone, okay? But I'm hoping I get to the end of this, because this is the last little bit I wanted to do anyway. So we'll see. Let's have a look. Now, it's the Biro thing I'm doing my curious creatures with in the mornings at the moment as well, which I'm really enjoying doing. And with them, I'm doing this combination of Biro and watercolor. So I thought, just for a bit of fun at the end here, I would just color this guy up with some watercolor. But you see what I mean? You can be lovely and fluid and free with a Biro and create these lovely swooping shapes. But you can also do really subtle shading by pressing that bit lighter, and it just gives a really nice fit. I mean, it is absolutely my favourite thing to draw with in sketchbooks, without a shadow of a doubt. So there you go. You get plenty of character with that. Right, I'm going to get some paint on here just in case my battery decides to go. And so I just use it. I'm just using this tiny little children's watercolor set, really, to do the stuff that I'm doing in the mornings at the moment. He has this nice green beard, our guy, of course, because it's our theme. And his tattoos, just a hint of the green there on the tattoo. Not so easy to do this upright, to be honest. This wasn't my plan. I was supposed to be on the main computer, and then I wouldn't have had battery issues. But there we go. La-di-da. These things happen, the best laid plans, as we say. I'm just putting a little bit of a Payne's grey in there now underneath to create a little bit more shade in there. And what we've done with him, we haven't fully coloured this guy in the ones we've been releasing for the big draw. We've been keeping it mostly black and white, but with just a little hint of the green and the grey. And it's always nice to give a little bit of a redness around a nose as well. I'm adding a bit more colour to this than I maybe would, but why not? Why not? There you go. Biro and watercolour. I think it makes for a really, really nice mixture. Do you like fine, medium or thick pens in Biro? Do you know what? Okay, I'm just going to jump in front here and chat now. I like everything. I like everything. I think if I had to just draw with one thing the rest of the time, it would be Biro and watercolour. Or Biro with the occasional bit of watercolour if I had to. I do love the one that I use for the Doodledays for the Doodleday. I almost don't use that for any other kind of work. I think I've saved that particularly for that because it's the diary and it's a very personal style. So I tend to use the pen just for that. As I say, the pencil I like to use when I'm grabbing something that I see in front of me and want to get a quick sketch down. But you can also do that with a Biro. And that's what I think is great. The Biro sits in your pocket. You don't have to sharpen a Biro. You know, that's what's great about it. It's just there. It's immediate. You can just pull it out and you can just do a drawing and it's done. It doesn't really smudge. It's pretty much instantly dry, and you've got the range of subtlety. And if the more textured the paper, the more subtleties you can get with a biro as well. Very smooth paper isn't the best thing for a biro. It's nice to have a little bit of grain for it to bite on to get some of the softer shading. So yeah, it's been kind of a lightning tour around my sketchbooks really for tonight, and showing you some of this stuff. What we'll do is we'll put these pictures up on the page, the ones I've been doing in the different mediums here, just with a little bit of talk underneath of each one, just to sort of go over what I've been saying as part of this. I hope it's been moderately interesting, and sorry about all the little technical issues. That was faintly embarrassing, although quite amusing, let's face it. And if we do another one, I promise I'll be a lot better prepared. Listen, thank you all so much for checking in, and take care. Grab your pencils and pens and do a little bit of drawing. If any of you want to have a go at some of this stuff, why don't you do it and post some up on the page? Do visitor posts on the Big Draw page. Let's see some of your drawings. Some of you guys maybe draw our guy. Draw the Green Man in whatever medium you fancy doing. I did a acrylic painting of him the other day, which I think we posted on the page, but he's just fun. It's, you know, everything you draw with, you get a different vibe back, and I think that's what's really nice. So listen guys, I'm going to sign off, and I will hopefully do this again sometime, and I'll be incredibly professional, and we'll find a slightly different theme to work around. All right, take care everybody.